The Blood-Soaked Lunacy, 5 werewolf films that shattered horror's boundaries. What drives filmmakers to push lycanthropic horror beyond the edge of sanity? Perhaps it's the same primal hunger that calls to the beast within us all. 1. Dog Soldiers, 2002. The military operation that descended into hell. What terrifying sight made a hardened Special Forces soldier wet himself on camera? The answer lies in the Scottish Highlands, where the hunters became the hunted. Neil Marshall's directorial debut didn't just redefine werewolf cinema, it tore its throat out. On a shoestring budget of just £2.3 million, Marshall crafted a claustrophobic nightmare that British horror fans still discuss in hushed tones. The film follows a squad of British soldiers on what should be a routine training exercise, but when they encounter the mutilated remains of a Special Forces team, the true nature of their exercise becomes horrifyingly clear. What horror aficionados rarely discuss is the film's meticulous military authenticity. Marshall consulted former SAS operators to ensure the tactical movements and communications were flawless, creating a jarring realism when supernatural chaos erupts. Actor Liam Cunningham later revealed that during the infamous intestines scene, actor Kevin McKidd genuinely vomited off camera, and they kept rolling. The werewolf designs themselves represent a deliberate throwback to practical effects. Marshall rejected early CGI proposals, insisting on 9-foot-tall practical suits that required performers to train for 3 months in advanced stilts. The creature's distinctive movements weren't random. They were based on studies of wolf pack hunting behaviors, especially the way wolves isolate prey from the herd. Most bone-chilling of all, the film's production was plagued by unexplained incidents. During night shoots in the Luxembourg forest, doubling for Scotland, crew members reported hearing wolf howls despite no wolves having been documented in the region for over a century. The local production assistant refused to return after the 3rd night of filming. The wet pants incident? Actor Darren Morfitt was genuinely terrified when the werewolf burst through the wall during his bathroom scene, an effect Marshall deliberately kept secret from him until cameras rolled. His fear reaction is entirely authentic. 2. Raw Meat, 1972. The band transformation that damaged viewers psychologically. What scene was so visceral it caused 7 audience members to require psychiatric intervention after a Parisian midnight screening? The answer lurks beneath the veneer of art house respectability. Incorrectly catalogued in many film databases, Julia Ducournau's Raw Meat, original French title, Viande Crue, has been systematically buried since its limited 1972 release. The Franco-Belgian production became infamous after its Parisian premiere resulted in multiple audience members requiring medical attention, not from fainting, but from what doctors described as acute psychological distress. The film follows Marguerite, a vegetarian biology student who develops cannibalistic urges after being forced to consume raw meat in a hazing ritual. What begins as art house body horror takes a supernatural turn when her transformation reveals ancestral lycanthropy passed through maternal bloodlines. The legendary 12-minute transformation sequence, shot in a single take without cuts, employed practical effects techniques that remaining crew members remain legally forbidden from discussing. Special effects designer Jean-Claude Mézières reportedly destroyed all production notes after completion and refused to work in horror again. Cinematographer Agnes Goddard exploited an experimental film stock that captured subcutaneous details with disturbing clarity, a technique later banned by Kodak themselves. Most chilling is the film's sound design. Composer Georges Delerue recorded actual bone fractures from hospital procedures, layering them with processed animal vocalizations at infrasonic frequencies below human hearing threshold, frequencies scientifically proven to induce anxiety and fear. The French Film Board demanded these frequencies be removed for general release, but bootleg copies containing the original sound mix have reportedly sold for thousands on underground markets. The psychiatric incidents? During the uncut midnight screening at Le Champeau Cinema in Paris, 7 viewers experienced what psychologists later termed identity dissolution panic, a temporary but severe dissociative state triggered by the film's sensory assault. The theater pulled the film the following day. 3. Ginger Snaps, 2000. The feminist howl that gave male executives nightmares. What scene was deemed so transgressive that 3 male studio executives walked out of the screening room, one visibly shaking? The answer lies in the blood-soaked metaphor that nearly didn't reach screens. John Fawcett's Canadian horror masterpiece didn't just slip through the production system, it fought tooth and claw. What few realize is that Ginger Snaps was rejected by 12 different production companies before Telefilm Canada reluctantly provided funding. The reason? An early script note from an unnamed executive read simply, "Too female. Too bloody. Too dangerous." The film's central conceit, linking female puberty to lycanthropy, struck a nerve that mainstream horror wasn't prepared for. Beneath its suburban setting lurks a revolutionary feminist text that weaponizes the werewolf mythos against patriarchal control. Catherine Isabel's transformation as Ginger isn't just physical. It's a metamorphosis of female adolescent rage unleashed without apology. The practical effects, supervised by K&B Effects Group veteran Paul Jones, pushed boundaries that CGI couldn't approach. The transformation prosthetics required Isabel to endure 7-hour makeup sessions, and the spinal elongation effect, achieved through a combination of hydraulics and performer contortion, caused Isabel to temporarily lose feeling in her extremities during one particularly intense scene. The film's sound design contains a disturbing secret. The werewolf vocalizations aren't entirely animal-based. Sound designer David McCallum recorded female opera singers performing at their lowest registers, then digitally manipulated these human sounds to create the creature's distinctive howl, ensuring that even the monster's voice maintained its feminist underpinnings. Most disturbing of all, the film's production coincided with a rare lunar phenomenon. 3 consecutive full moons appeared larger than normal due to perigee proximity. During filming of the infamous bedroom transformation scene, Toronto experienced an unexplained 3-minute power outage that affected only the production studio and immediate surroundings. The executive walkout. It occurred during the menstrual blood/transformation parallel montage, a sequence that remained in the film despite multiple demands for its removal. One executive reportedly needed a drink afterward, muttering about unmarketable feminist body horror. The film has since grossed over $20 million against its $4.5 million budget. 4. Late Phases, 2014 The elder horror that made hardened critics weep. What scene caused 3 veteran horror critics to openly weep during its Fantastic Fest premiere? The answer lies in the devastating truth beneath its monstrous exterior. Adrian Garcia Bogliano's Late Phases remains perhaps the most emotionally devastating werewolf film ever made. Masquerading as a simple werewolves in a retirement community premise, the film conceals a philosophical depth that ambushes unprepared viewers with existential terror far more disturbing than its creature effects. Nick Damasai's performance as blind Vietnam veteran Ambrose McKinley required extraordinary preparation. To accurately portray blindness, Damasai wore specialized contact lenses that genuinely rendered him unable to see during filming. His fight choreography, learned while actually blind, resulted in Damasai suffering 3 broken ribs during production. He refused medical treatment until completing the day's shooting. The werewolf design by Robert Kurtzman deliberately subverts traditional lycanthropy. The creatures stand unnaturally erect with disturbingly human proportions, a conscious choice to blur the line between human and beast. The transformation sequence, requiring 14 separate prosthetic stages, was filmed chronologically over 22 consecutive hours, with actor Ethan Embry later reporting hallucinations from sleep deprivation during the final stages. What few viewers recognize is the film's meticulously researched portrayal of Vietnam veteran PTSD. Consultant psychologists from the Veterans Administration provided detailed input on McKinley's behavior patterns. The character's relationship with his service dog contains specific trained responses documented in actual military service animal programs. Most haunting is Damasai's revelation that during the film's devastating father-son reconciliation scene, he channeled his own unresolved grief over his estranged father's death years earlier. The emotion on screen isn't acting, it's genuine catharsis captured on film. The critics' tears? They fell during the final confrontation, not from the violence, but from the devastating father-son theme that reaches its conclusion as Ambrose finds purpose in protecting others despite knowing his own death approaches. Horror critics rarely admit emotional vulnerability, yet 3 veteran reviewers acknowledged openly weeping during the Fantastic Fest screening. 5. The Howling, 1981 The transformation that changed horror forever. What horrifying on-set accident during filming led to a special effects technician's hospitalization and subsequent refusal to ever work on another werewolf film? The answer lurks in the shadows of this groundbreaking classic. Joe Dante's The Howling didn't just raise the bar for werewolf cinema, it ripped it from its foundations. Behind its reputation as a horror classic lies a troubled production that pushed practical effects technology beyond existing limits, with sometimes dangerous consequences. The film's revolutionary transformation sequences, designed by then 21-year-old Rob Bottin, utilized groundbreaking pneumatic bladders under foam latex appliances. What horror historians rarely mention is that these systems operated at pressures exceeding safety recommendations by nearly 40%. During early tests, one bladder catastrophically failed, embedding latex fragments into a technician's arm with such force that surgical removal was required. The crew referred to the incident as the eruption, and safety protocols were hastily rewritten. Actress Dee Wallace has revealed that her terrified reactions during transformation scenes were not entirely performative. The hydraulic apparatus supporting actor Robert Picardo during his extended transformation sequence made sounds so disturbing, grinding metal under pneumatic pressure, that Wallace experienced genuine panic during filming. Her famous line, "You're hurting me," was improvised during genuine discomfort when Picardo's prosthetic claws accidentally scratched her during a take. The film's sound design contains layers of disturbing authenticity. Sound designer James Horner recorded sounds from actual veterinary surgeries on injured animals, layering these organic sounds beneath the transformation effects. When mixed with processed human screams recorded at subaudible frequencies, the result created what sound engineers termed visceral distress in viewers, a physical rather than psychological reaction. Most unsettling is the film's connection to real-world violence. During production, 3 separate wolf attacks on humans were reported in California, the first such incidents in over 50 years. Dante later called the timing disturbingly coincidental, and admitted to experiencing nightmares throughout the editing process. The hospitalized technician, effects assistant Mike McCracken, spent 3 days in intensive care after the pneumatic bladder failure drove latex fragments dangerously close to his brachial artery. He recovered fully but refused to work on werewolf films again, reportedly telling Bottin, "Some things aren't meant to change shape that way." To conclude, the beast within us all. What drives our fascination with these 5 films that pushed werewolf horror beyond acceptable boundaries? Perhaps it's because they reflect something we instinctively recognize, the thin membrane between civilization and savagery, the beast that lurks within human skin. These filmmakers didn't just create monster movies, they crafted visceral explorations of transformation that force us to confront uncomfortable truths about our own nature. Their blood-soaked visions continue to haunt us because, deep down, we recognize the howl of something primal that still lurks within us all, waiting for darkness to fall and the full moon to rise. The question we promised to answer? What drives filmmakers to such extremes? Now we know, they're simply holding up a mirror to the monster that has always been there, staring back at us from behind human eyes.